I am.
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 I am. I am.
I am.
I am.
I am Black History.
We are Black History.
And welcome everyone to a very special edition of Unexplained Cases Medium. You've got Rick Garner, Maryam the Medium, Terri Jude Davis. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Terry's going to be our guest host, and then our very special guest tonight is Mr. Chip Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thanks. I am happy to be here.
Awesome.
Excited.
Well, welcome to the broadcast. We're excited as well. Last week we had an opportunity to kick things off with this unique series and a conversation with Ron Woodson, and that was fabulous in a lot of different ways to know him. Also, the remote viewing segment for folks who are familiar with our programs, especially with our late night show, Unexplained Cases Live. We definitely like to have remote viewings. So this version of Unexplained Cases Medium has more of a flavor of that, and we'll be able to check out a very special location that Chip has for Maryam to gain some insights on. So by mentioning that, just want to let folks know this isn't the typical show where you're going to have like pick a card and readings and things of that nature. We're focusing on being able to celebrate Black history and be very focused on getting to know and find out about a location he has some questions about. So, hey, we'll get right into it, folks. If you have any comments, you have any questions, as usual, put those into our comment section and we will get those onto the broadcast. But right now, hey, Maryam and I are going to step back, and Terri, you can introduce everybody to Chip and see what's going on.
Thank you. So happy to be doing this. So excited. Last week was amazing. Thank you, Chip, for doing this. I've talked you into more stuff. I am like so happy that you decided to do it. And I mean, honestly, I'm really happy to be able to do this on the heels of the inauguration, because I'm still on such a high from everything, including Miss Amanda Gorman, who I'm just so enamored with. I can't even begin to say. And because you are a writer, I know you appreciate that as well.
I certainly do. And as a native Angelino, I'm also quite proud that she's Angelino. She's from here.
Yep, representing, which is so cool. I want to take a moment to brag a little bit about you. Chip, who went to school with him call him Chip. It is Robert Adon Williams, which I said wrong on the T's last week. You speak several languages, including Turkish and Portuguese, and you read French and Spanish. Oh, God. You've lived and worked in countries including Brazil, Turkey, and Japan, and have traveled over 30 countries. And you told me that you spent all of 1 month in the Peace Corps in Zaire. Did you want to know the story? Is there a story behind that, or it wasn't a good
Well, I wasn't really clear about what I wanted to do after UCLA. And I had this big party, Bop Till You Drop the Congo party, because I was assigned to Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. You know, the Peace Corps, they call you. It's a little bit like Mission Impossible. I don't know if they still do it this way, but back in 1983, you applied. And you would wait for a response, and the response was a phone call, and they offered you an assignment, and you either agreed to it or not right there on the phone. There was no petitioning for an alternative place. And when they told me Zaire, something in me just kind of, I didn't feel good about it. I felt uneasy. There was a gut feeling that wasn't quite right. But then I said to myself, don't let fear stand in the way of something that might be really great, you know? So I accepted. But, you know, after about 2 or 3 weeks there, I really began to feel uncertain about the choice. About 80 people went over on the plane, on the flight, and 25 of them got back on the plane the next day and left.
Wow.
Yeah, I stayed on for just about a month, and I asked for a transfer to another country, and they said, we really can't do that, but if you're going to leave, this is the window of time when that should happen.
You better go now.
And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I had that feeling was because, we were there I was there to teach English to people who already spoke French.
Right.
And, the idea was that they could have a Western education if they spoke English, but my feeling was they spoke French and they had much greater needs than that.
Right.
And then also, I just wasn't ready for soldiers walking around with dark sunglasses and automatic weapons on the streets, and I wasn't prepared.
Yeah. That would conclude it for me. Well, that's a little bit much, and what a shock to the system culturally. It was. I called myself going home to Mother Africa, and I was like, whoa, wait. Yeah, it sounds pretty. It sounds pretty, but yeah.
It's a big continent. There are other places where I might be. Yeah. So.
One of the things. Oh, first of all, I cannot do this show without talking about how connected we all are, because when I was pre-interviewing you for this show, I told you about the first show, which was Ron Woodson, who is a very dear friend of mine. Yes. And you told me that you live across the street from the house that that Maryam was remote viewing. And
I can look out my window right now and look at that house.
That's amazing to me. And you two, now you two have been connected, but you didn't know each other.
Didn't know each other at all.
Those are the coincidences that, or the synchronicities that happen that I'm always so blown away by, but so giddy about, because I feel like so many of the people who are chosen family for me, and you being definitely one of them, have a connection of some kind. And that just kind of warms my heart, because it means that I'm following in the path that I should be following it.
Exactly. I want to add that I also live in a house.
Oh, that's right.
Designed by
Paul Williams.
Yeah. So not only is his home across the street from me, I am living in a house that was designed by him. So.
That's just so crazy to me.
And my grandparents were friends of his.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Now, was your family home, is that a Paul Wright too, or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
My dad's good friend, Alvin Johnson, designed the house.
Oh, okay. God, I love that house. We talk about international, and Ron too has traveled the world as you have. How important do you think it is for Black Americans to go abroad?
I think it is essential for African Americans to travel abroad, because we have a sense of America being the center of the world, and it is the center of our personal worlds, but it is not the center of the world. And the way our experience has been in America is not necessarily what the Black experience is in other parts of the world. And one thing that I just feel that if you can step out of this paradigm and experience your sense of self in a different setting, where people are not looking at you in a certain way, they're not carrying a story around in their psyche about who you are, they're not clutching their purse when you approach. That doesn't happen to me anymore, but as a young man, just walking down the street, I inspired fear in people, and that damaged me, just walking down the street, listening to the birds singing in the trees, frightened people,
Right.
So traveling abroad broadens your sense of self. You realize that you are a world citizen. You're not just this caricature that that America has painted you as. So, I mean, I like to think that we have progressed to the point where that kind of stereotype, those caricatures are not so strong, but
right.
there still is, you know.
There still, yeah, there still is, as we have seen, unfortunately, in all these years. How, when you first lived abroad, when you became an expat and you were living abroad, was there a noticeable difference of how you were treated? Like we talk about expand yourself so you can see how other countries see you. Was there a culture shock when you first got there and got settled in your daily life? The attitudes that other people had towards you?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways I can approach that.
Okay.
One is just traveling, just when I was 15 years old, traveling in an exchange program. I went to Spain to study Spanish at the University of Salamanca, but that included a week in Paris, a train ride down to Antibes, and then a cruise around the Mediterranean. And the first really noticeable thing for me was I was waiting in New York at JFK Airport to meet up with the rest of the cohort, the other kids and the chaperone that I was to join.
Right.
And you know, I'm an LA kid, and
right.
I'm standing at the airport, and a number of people approached me and asked me questions in Spanish, and that just kind of like why are these people speaking to me in Spanish? and an elderly woman came up to me, and she was kind of insistently like asking me a question, and a guy on a little cart drove up and said, "Hey, how can I help you?" to her in Spanish. And he answered her question. I said, "You know, why are people asking me questions in Spanish?" And he said, "Aren't you Puerto Rican?" And so that was my first inkling that, you know, it's not really my identity, but that a bigger picture of what it means to be of African descent and different places. And then also, when that same trip, we went to Morocco. We went to Tangier for one day, and that was my first experience of being surrounded by people who were similar to me and feeling like I was part of the majority population for the first time in my life.
Wow.
Now I'm not Moroccan, I'm not Muslim, and so there's no confusion about that. It's just the sense of being in a nation of people closer to my color was something different.
Yeah.
And I just found that people were interested in me as a person. Living in Turkey, I lived in Turkey for 5 years, from 50 to 55 years old. And that was a very liberating experience, because the American story and even the Western story of race relations was not part of the picture.
Yeah.
And people just took me as an individual. They embraced me. You know, I just felt completely at home. My ethnic background might be a curiosity. Where are you from? Oh, really? That's it. But I was, you know, Martin Luther King wrote about the content of our character.
Right.
And
exactly.
That was the key. You know, your character is what opens the door or shuts it, and the door was open.
Yeah, I love that. That is what we all wish we could have.
Yes.
Here. That's what we all want to have here, you know, and that really is a lot of the hopefulness that I got from the inauguration. Was this little girl, I keep saying little girl because she looks so young, but she's
too. Yeah,
you know, and taking on such a powerful moment and just nailing it. And you know, and that's what I kept thinking when I was watching it, is that's what we're asking for, is opportunities, is equal opportunities to do great things, you know, to leave a legacy, to leave a mark, to share what we have to give. I mean, that's what we're asking for, to all be judged by that content of our character, that we have gone through so much to build and create and you know, blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about that, I know that 2020 was very difficult for all of us, but I feel like a lot of my friends had a very transformative time in spite of everything that was happening.
Yes.
What would you say was the transformative moment or lesson that you pulled from 2020 personally?
I think the most important lesson for me was how this, in a number of instances in my life, it has been driven home to me that all of this is very tenuous.
Yeah.
That tomorrow is not promised.
Right.
But this plague year, if you will, occurred the year I turned 60.
Yeah.
I turned 60 at the end of November of 2020, and just, wake up.
Yeah.
This doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
And choose yourself.
Yes.
Yes. You may or may not survive this. Most people who contract COVID get over it. I mean, it's not a death sentence necessarily. Right. Unfortunately, for many people, it is fatal, and we honor those people. But chances are, it's not necessarily going to take me out, but it is a wake up call.
Oh yeah.
And so I have made choices in the last 12 months that affirm my autonomy, my sovereignty, my allegiance to myself, and living for my own fulfillment. Yeah. Not in a selfish way, but in a self-loving way.
And so, because I think people get confused. Yeah. I think that people do get that confused. And, it's easy. We were all on such a circular path. It was like almost a treadmill that everyone had so much going on in their lives, and there were so many different directions that we were being pulled, and we had so many distractions. And I think that I know that quiet, where it went from I've got all these plans and all this travel, I'm doing this and that, to you're not going anywhere, really shut people down in different ways and made them, and everyone has different situations. I mean, obviously people who have kids, people who have relationships and all these different things, there were varying degrees of the time you had to really reflect, on your inner work. But I think all of us came through it, and we're kind of still in it. All of us have come through it, changed on some level, and
I want to say that my meditation practice has been incredibly helpful during this time, because the practice is full of self inquiry and contemplation. Yeah. And one spends time with oneself in a way that over 30 years of meditating and having this practice has prepared me for this time of sort of isolation.
Exactly.
And it hasn't hit me that hard, because I tend to be kind of monastic anyway. Right.
Yeah, and meditation has definitely saved me in many, many ways, and I'm just happy that there's something positive to bring from such a not so positive experience.
Absolutely.
You say meditation 3 times and I pop up.
Yes, exactly. That is my meditation teacher.
Chip, you should come on my Sunday show, because all I do is preach that. It was when I heard you say that, I was like, oh
my God. So what I wanted to talk about the fact that you have a lot of Black history within your family. Your mom, I'd love to start with your mom, and then go to your dad, and then get to the location we're about to do.
Okay.
So tell me about your mom, who I absolutely love so much, and her moment in history.
Okay, my mother was Joan Roberta Moore Williams. She was born Joan Roberta Moore, married my father, Bob Williams. And she was a lovely human being, like an angel to me. I just adored my mother. And she was, quite frankly, a beautiful human being, physically and as well as internally. She was just a lovely human being. In 1958, my mother worked for the city of Pasadena in the utilities department, and her coworkers nominated her. I think it's important to understand she did not compete for this. She was nominated, unbeknownst to her, she was nominated by her coworkers to be what was called Miss Crown City. And she was to ride the city of Pasadena's float in the 1958 Rose Parade. So this would have been 1957 when she was nominated, and she was to ride the float on January 1st, 1958. So that was quite an honor. And she was invited to a big ceremony where they coronated her, and she was invited to cut the ribbon at the new Sears Roebuck in Pasadena. She attended a lot of city functions around this event. And the Star News, the Pasadena Star News, came to interview her. And they knocked on the door, and my brown-skinned father answered the door, and my older sisters, I was not born yet, I was 2 years off stage. But my sisters were there, and the journalist realized that that Miss Crown City, Joan Williams, was not a white woman, but was a very, very fair-skinned woman of color. And that got back to the city of Pasadena, and the next thing we knew, or they knew, again, I wasn't there, was, well, there's no money for a float this year. Now, mind you, Miss Crown City had been a part of the Rose Parade for years and years and years, and this was the first time they said, sorry, we just can't afford a float this year, kindly return the crown to us, thank you. And so that wasn't very nice. And my mother, she wasn't broken up about it because, again, she hadn't
competed
for it, but it was still hurtful, very hurtful.
Right.
But then years and years later, a journalist from the Pasadena Weekly, Justin Chapman, learned about my mother's story. He asked her several times to please let him cover it. She said, look, that's water under the bridge. I'm not interested. But she became convinced because we thought maybe it would be healing for the community to learn the story. Well, so she did the story. She wound up being featured 3 or 4 times on the Pasadena Weekly cover. And then the city of Pasadena, as well as the Rose Parade, the Tournament of Roses, came to her and said, we'd like for you to ride the front float in the 2015 Rose Parade. So they made amends.
I love that.
Awesome.
I love that story.
That's so neat.
I love that story so much. And the other story, which is very short, but it means the world to me, is that your dad was a Tuskegee Airman. Yes. And he wanted to tell the story of the real story of the Tuskegee Airmen. And it took him many years, which I can
about
I know that follows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just give us a quick story about that?
Yeah, Dad was my grandfather, Hank Williams in Iowa, owned an airplane, and he was a licensed pilot, and my father and my uncle were also licensed pilots. My dad's best friend was a white kid in Ottumwa, Iowa. They went down together to apply to the Army Air Corps, and application was given to my dad's friend, but not to my dad. But years later, or sometime later, Eleanor Roosevelt pushed for the Tuskegee Airmen to have an opportunity to fly. My father applied to that program. He was accepted. His squadron never lost a single plane that they were protecting. And when he got back, he wanted to tell the story of the airmen. And all the studios were like, that never happened. There's no such thing, you're making it.
Right.
And eventually they said, well, that might have happened, but no one's going to believe it.
Right.
And eventually, in about 1994 or so, HBO came to him and said, we hear you have a picture, we want to make it, we'll do it your way. And they did. And Lawrence Fishburne played the character based on my dad in that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What was the name of the movie?
Tuskegee Airmen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's another one by George Lucas that came out in the 2000s. This is 1995.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's neat.
So now it's time to get get Maryam into the picture and tell me about the location that she's going to investigate today.
So this is kind of interesting because it's not a structure. There is a graveyard on the land where my great-grandfather was enslaved. And in that graveyard, his father is buried, and his father was also his slave master. So I wanted to plug into that time and place and understand what being born in that context was like for my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, I believe he was emancipated. Well, he was emancipated, obviously, at the time of emancipation, but he was a little boy. Mm-hmm. But what was it like to grow up in an environment where his siblings belonged to the family that owned him, essentially, that enslaved him, and to know that his father was also his enslaver. And I recently learned he had a brother as well, and I wanted to learn about the brother.
What is your great-grandfather's father's name?
His name was Colonel Dr. James Wellborn Starnes.
Okay, let me get a little bit of information, a little bit more information. So hold on. Okay, so say I got to write this down. There's so many moving parts in this story. I might be asking names multiple times. I might ask the same question a couple times, just because once I get in there, I don't hold facts because that's not where my information comes from, as you know. So let me just write this down. I just need it. Colonel, say it one more time, Colonel.
Colonel Dr. James Wellborn Starnes.
Okay, and then your mom's name, full name.
Birth name, or?
Yes.
Joan Roberta Moore.
And then your dad's name.
Robert Wayland Williams.
Okay. Here we go. It's so interesting because for those of you that are new to the show, if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my iPad that has photos that help trigger information. And you know, there's so much energy, and I can't tell if there's just like multiple people, but there's also just a lot of emotion. And so for me to be able to hone in and really differentiate who's saying what, who's feeling what, where it's all coming from, it might take just a minute for us to kind of land and piece it together. So I might be asking questions to prompt and to clarify. It also might help me in this situation, Chip, if you let me know if I'm on the right track or not.
Okay.
I feel like there's some energies here that may or may not be related, and so they may take me off course.
Okay.
I know that while you guys were interviewing, when I went to Colonel Starnes, should I refer to him as that?
Yes.
Yeah. He's here. And when I said hello, he said, "What do you want?" And so I said, we would like to have, ask you some questions. He's saying that he keeps saying everything was a lie. Everything was a lie. He keeps saying that. He's saying that things that have been written, things that have been said are a lie. He is very upset about how he's been portrayed. If this doesn't swing around into our topic, I'm going to cut him off and I'll take a different direction. But I want to first see where he's going with this. Okay. His main focus and his main concern is his ego and his reputation. He's mad about how his reputation was shown and displayed. He's saying that there was like fights that I won, that I was told that people said I didn't win. He's very much a man. I don't use this word. He's a man-child. He's just this young child born into just like this entitled, whatever you want, you can have whatever you want. And so he was taking at a very young age. And so it's like he could do no wrong in anyone's eyes. And there wasn't that much control over, I want to say, people's behavior and people's behavior. Like, I feel like they're saying there wasn't any control at that time. So it's like I have the Colonel here, and then I have my guides on this side that are trying to balance out the information. You said, Chip, that your mom passed, right?
Yes, she
because
passed away.
Yeah, I have her here too. Tell me her first name again.
Joan,
that's what I thought. Yeah, so she's so cute. She's like a combination of fairy energy and angelic energy, and like just so light, and like you want to squeeze her and kiss her. She's just so sweet. And but she says hi. So I'm kind of jumping right now. I've got Mom, I've got my information, my guides, and then I have this dude. I don't even want to refer to him as Colonel, but we'll play into that just so we can have conversation. But Mom says hi, says excited that you're doing this, excited to be here, excited. She's like, I'm not going to say I'm excited to see you because I see you all the time and I know how you're doing. She's really fun, and she's definitely obviously passed over and into the higher realms, but she also brings herself down to guide you and communicate with you. And there's others. I think you said you have two sisters.
Yes.
She's referencing two females. Okay, yeah, and two sisters that she's got a lot going on. She's very busy. And but she's here. She says, let's go. Okay, so there's Joan, guides, and then Colonel. Okay, so Colonel, you're outnumbered already. We've got two plus me here, and then you here. But I'm going to put aside my judgment, and we're going to chat. So tell me. No, he says, I refuse to talk about my personal life. It's all a lie. He actually, he won't even take ownership actually of your father.
Well, this is my mother's lineage.
Yeah, great-great-grandfather. Yeah. Tell me the great-grandfather's name so I can refer to him correctly.
Green Joseph.
Just Green Joseph. Okay. So the Colonel isn't taking responsibility for he doesn't take ownership. First off, he's got kids all over the world. Like, he's got kids all over. I mean, don't take that literally when I said the world, but they're like, my guide stopped me. They're like, not literally, but there's a lot spread out over, just spread out. He doesn't take response. So I'm getting like information over here, and then he's like, that's a lie. And then they'll say something and he'll go, that's a lie. So what they are giving me is he's got kids all over the place. He doesn't take responsibility for anyone or anything. And he says, I want to talk about, and I want to tell everyone the wars, like, I don't know, the wars really, like, I don't know if war is the right word. Like, he keeps saying fights and wars that I won and that I started and that I finished and I did all this stuff. He's just kind of a pompous ass. So, I'm going to say goodbye to him because I don't feel like he's worthy of our attention, especially since he's, hold on. What is it? What do you want me to, what am I supposed to do something with him? He's just kind of hanging out there. Like, does that matter? Hang on. People are chatting to determine if we need to just do something with him. What do you want me to do with them? We want someone else to do. Okay. They're actually going, he got in trouble. They're actually going to, they're saying it's time for him to not be accessible to others. So they're going to remove him. So we won't be able to access him. Sorry, or hope there's no hurt feelings. So I'm going to move on from him because they're taking him away. And I'm going to move to your dad, not your dad. Why do I keep calling him your dad? That's the question.
Great grandfather.
I know he was, but he's came back as your father.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay, I'm mad at Terri. I'm like, I know, Terri. I'm sorry. It's just that the Colonel's energy is so ugly. It's like kind of taking over me. Hang on. I got to hang with Joan for a minute because I'm just like that, because he was so angry and so aggro over everything. And that's like how I just answered you. It was like him. Okay, so.
Before you got into that, Miriam, Jordan had an observation. I just wanted to, seem like a good time to bring that in to see if you have any insights into what he's sharing.
I don't know. It's very well could be. I feel like I haven't even gone there yet. There's been hold on to that thought, Jordan, and we'll see if all that other stuff comes up. That might be why there's so much going on. For sure. Because there's so much happening. Maybe that's part of it. We'll circle back to that for sure. So dad. Is your dad your real dad? I shouldn't have put that in quotes. Your real dad. Is he still alive?
Blood dad.
No, he passed away in 97.
Okay. Dad. Joan. Dad. What's going on here? Were they married when they passed?
Yeah. My mother passed away about just close to 2 years ago. My dad passed away 21 years ago.
Okay.
And they were married.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. They're communicating for a second. Hold on. Well, hang on. Let me in on this, guys. What someone said they found out. Okay, so yes, we figured it out. Okay, so Green Joseph is Robert Whalen. Is everyone following? So yeah. Chip's great grandfather came back through in body as Chip's father in this life. Nice. Okay. So now that that's cleared, because I was getting very confused, now I'm going to talk to, see, it's these names that are getting me. Now I'm going to talk to Green Joseph, but for sake of ease, for me, I'm going to refer to him as Dad, okay?
Okay.
Because that's all I feel. So Dad was born Oh shit, this is deep. It was so hard. It was so, every moment, he's like, I would have these moments of being a child and laughing and playing. And then that all just is taken away, because of race. And you go from being this child that only knows joy to instantly knowing such grief and such horrific pain, you can't process it. And although I grew up and was able to function, it's not something that should be, he can't finish the sentence. He doesn't even want to revisit it, but he will for you. When he came back through in body in this life, he was born with a lot of fear carried over. But he was also blessed with Joan. Joan is this angelic force that chose to come back into body to help Dad with his pain. And so much of the work that she did with your dad was subtle and was subconscious. It was many ways her sole existence. But back when your father was born onto that plantation, she was there. Were you his mother then? Were you his mother? That's what you feel like to me. You feel like you were his mother when you birthed him then. She's saying she did. She's saying that she was your father's. Now this is a soap opera. She was your father's mother, his mother in that life. Are we following?
Yes.
And so, because she was, and I nobody knows the rules of the cosmos. All we know is when we are granted the access to speak to the cosmos. All I can do is tell you this. Your mother was an angelic form and came into body, and that doesn't happen often. It's rare. And her first go round was birthing your father on that plantation. And that love, she loved deep, obviously. Anyone who's a mother or father understands that, and she always carried that. But life then is completely out of your hands, obviously. So Joan's talking now as Joan. She's saying, I want to share with you all what your father and I experienced living on a plantation. But I choose to do it in such a way that doesn't continue to spread the fear and the sadness and the anger that lives there, because there were other things. There were other things that lived there. There was love that these hold on. there was love that lived there no matter what happened. And all of these families had that one thing in common. And we looked out for each other. And there were moments where we would rise up, knowing life would be lost from it. But it was our only option. There was love, there was power, and there was devotion to making a change. And there was many of us that understood that this incarnation would only be what it was, but that we would come back and there would be more. I'm not, she's saying it's hard for Maryam to tell the stories because she's human. When you're in angelic form, we understand. There's a knowing and there's a trust. Humans have to work very hard to understand that trust and to understand that the human experiment is a very low functioning one. So the pain that Maryam experiences is the only way she can tell the story as I tell it. One thing that I want you to know, Chip, is that there was extraordinary commitment to one another. There was this ability for us to communicate to other families and to other Black folks without speech. It's like we could walk past each other and communicate. The power that Black men and women carry was all, of course, always a threat. But at the time, and even now, the white man had no understanding of what they were afraid of. They could never articulate what they were afraid of. Now, for some people, they will simply say, oh, it's because we look different. It's much deeper than that. It's that there's this power that Black men and women have always carried prior to being enslaved. Power of understanding our connection to earth, our connection to spirit, our connection to community, to each other, our ability to feed, clothe, and support without ever harming or hurting another being, animal, human, insect. And we carried that. And that's what the white man feared, was our ability to thrive without materialism, without killing, without harming. To them, that was witchcraft. So they made sure to take care of that. And I'm Joan saying, I'm explaining this all to you because it's more important for you to understand who you are and where you come from pre-slavery. So that we then can understand the experience of slavery, forgive, and move through it. Understood that's easier said than done. But that's where Joan would like you both, Terri and Chip, to take this experience. I don't need to walk you through the abuse. I don't need to walk you through the pain. I think that's evident. But the moments that aren't shared is that what I just shared, the ability to communicate with other families to stand up and rise knowing that life will be lost, but that is understood and that is okay. Honor, integrity aren't words that people would use about slaves, but we carried honor and integrity in spite of. She says it's a different time. Things are going to, the next 2 years, which is a time frame I gave last week, you're going to see change. Substantial. She keeps using the word rise up because she's referencing what's happened this year. Yeah. Obviously, that was, she said, okay, understanding the white folks understand. She says folks, white folks understanding Black folks is key. It's time for the Black folks to understand who they are and own that. But more importantly, it's time for the white folks to watch in awe as that happens. And that's happening. And she says, this pile of garbage, she's referencing to those that are still carrying the fear and the racism. But she's not referring to these people as a pile of garbage. She's referring to their energy, like this pile of energy that they have created of garbage is going to be taken out. And she's giving me very specific instruction. As we do these Black history shows, she wants me to be very specific about how I speak so that we aren't set up as victims. Rather, we are set up and learning about who we were pre-slavery. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm not sure how. She's saying something to the. Okay, I'll say it. That we were all the first human. However, we're not going to talk about how humans were created, where they come from. That's not what I'm talking about, she says. But human life started out Black and then lightened up. Different areas, and I'm hesitating because I'm trying to articulate what she's saying specifically, and I'm sure there's history and research that can support or not support that or look at that. But the problem is not the problem. The situation was as folks started to lighten up, their skin tone started to lighten, they lost their connection to spirit and to earth. And they found fire, she's saying? You mean fight? No? Okay, fire and fight and war and give me this and give me that. And I want more of that and more of this. And that coincided with the lightening of the skin. And so that's where this disconnect started. So it's like, because they started moving away from the tribes that were, I might need a historian to help me with this, but as they started to move away from their tribes, their skin started to get lightened. But more importantly, there was a physical response to why the skin lightened. But more importantly, as they moved away from their tribes, they moved away from their connection to spirit and to planet. And that's when darkness took over the white folks. And that's when the destruction started. And so understanding that we are all Black first, so silly as that, she says, as that may sound, but we were all born Black, and then our skin lightened, And for those of us that understand, there is a sense of not wanting to be associated with the lightening of the skin because of what's been done, right? Mm-hmm. But that's when you go to the very core, that's who we are. And that's what I want you to know and remember. And whoever's watching, of course, know and remember. She's smiling. Chip, any questions?
Well, I would like to say that you definitely, that's
mother for sure.
And just black folks and white folks, that's
for sure.
I want to say thank you for coming through to my mother. It's not the direction I thought I was going, but it makes complete sense that she's so present. So I wasn't looking to tap into the pain of plantation life necessarily. What I wanted to know from G.J. Starnes, from Green Joseph Starnes, was more along the lines of how did you go from he went from slavery to becoming a doctor, and just what did it take within himself to make that transformation? That's a huge leap that he made. And then also I wanted to know about his brother Isaac Elias, and why the family never knew about him. What was it about him that we weren't supposed to know, if that makes sense?
So let me start with so this all aligns with I see. Okay, so that because Joan was his mother, he was taught this how do you say it? It's like she says, she's like putting blinders on and lifting the chin and saying, don't look and don't look back and don't ask. Don't look and don't look back and don't ask. Because if you do all of that, you'll never move forward. Mm. And so she's showing me like what horses wear. That was what she tried to set up, was that don't look and don't look back, because you'll never move forward. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he did. That's what I did. That's what that's what he did.
Okay.
And he said, there's something, he says, the one thing that I was able to retain was this it's like this seed that was planted in me of truth and truth to power, and the power behind words and the lack of power behind words, and the power behind action and the lack of power behind action. In other words, he's saying, yes, there's power behind words, but depending on who's listening, what are they going to do with those words? And so he says, as I was yelled at, as I was beaten, as I was locked out, pushed out, I understood the behavior and I didn't take ownership of it. I just had my blinders on and I didn't look back and I didn't look to the side and I just stepped forward. There's this sense of like callousness that had to happen and that he created for himself. This sense of callousness. No, I never stopped loving, but I had to shut down to do what I had to do. I'm sure we'll be seeing this theme, but very similar to the gentleman from last Saturday. There was this sense of shutting down when you're not with your family so that you can do what you need to do and be who you need to be to get where you want to get. For some reason, he's saying that part of his life was not the defining part of his life. The defining part of his life was being a child and being with his mother. That was more defining for him. That was more memorable, more important to him. I'm not concerned with, I understand that he's saying, I understand that those accomplishments were imperative. Those accomplishments were what had to happen for society. I understand. But my heart and everything that I am is because of who raised me. And what I did with that information. But to make a long story short, he says, you say what you need to say and do what you need to do to bring you to the next step. And saying what you need to say and doing what you need to do doesn't always leave you in a place of integrity, because it wouldn't be choices that I would make. And this is, again, what we heard from last Saturday. Understanding that you do what you need to do, and they were able to do that. And he was able to do that to get where he wanted to go. So his brother was Isaac?
Isaac, Elias, yes.
And what's the situation? What's the situation or concern? Or
Well, my family is very, very well acquainted with our history and our ancestors. Like, I can name people from 3 generations ago in photographs, 2 generations ago. And I made a trip to San Antonio where there's a family plot at a historical African-American cemetery. And my grandmother is buried there. My great-grandparents are buried there. And G.J. Starnes married into that family. But then there was another gravestone in the same plot, which said, Isaac Elias Starnes, my brother. I believe he died in 1893. And G.J. Starnes had paid for the stone and the burial. And so it was his brother. And nobody knew anything about this brother. My grandmother never spoke of him. My mother and her sisters didn't know that he existed. And I just happened to find this stone, you know. But it was definitely his brother, because it says, in memory of my brother. And then it says, it's signed basically G.J. Starnes. So I wanted to know something about this great uncle of mine that I don't know. Like, what, if there's something to learn about him, I'd like to know.
Okay. I'm just asking him if that's why he kept referring to his childhood as being the years that he remembered and loved and was so important to him, because I feel like this brother died young. Does it say when he died or how old he was when he died?
He's actually younger than G.J. Starnes. He is about 10 years younger than him. So G.J. Starnes would have been like 11 or so when he was born. It was after emancipation.
But do you know how old he was? How old is the brother was when he died?
He was 25 when he died.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, is that him? Because I'm picking up on his youth. I can't get it. No one wants to talk about it, and Joan isn't. She's staying neutral. No one wants to talk about it. I don't know why. It may be a timing thing. We might need to revisit this in a few months, or if you gather, if something happens and you find more information, but the pieces aren't all there yet for me to go there.
Okay. Okay.
Well, yeah, we went a little bit longer, which was not a problem. I wanted us to be able to kind of tie up all the loose ends because, Chip, how was this ride? I always have to ask folks if you kept your arms and legs inside the ride at the whole time there.
Well, it was really something for my mother died recently for me. It hasn't been 2 years yet, and I didn't want to sort of look for my mother in this. I did have a feeling that she might be present. And I'm not surprised that my mother and I had a tremendous connection, and I have had 2 very, very strong visitations from her, 3 actually, since she passed. And so it does not surprise me that she was present. What was really affirming was to hear in Maryam's delivery, to hear some of my mother's language in there. And then also referring to when she spoke of the people, the enslaved people on the plantations, being able to communicate with each other, speaking, and also looking out for each other, and the tremendous love that they had for each other and how they support each other. That was passed down to us. And my Aunt Susie, my mother's sister, would say, I remember being at a wedding somewhere, and Susie would say, "Chip, come here. I want you. This is Aunt so-and-so, or this is cousin so-and-so." And it turns out these people were not blood cousins, but they came from the same plantation that my great-grandparents came from. And so they referred to each other as family because they were family with each other.
Yeah.
And that sense of community, that sense of being each other's family, passed down through generations.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I'm so happy you did this. I'm so happy.
I was afraid that it was a little, like, without an exact location, it might be difficult, but
there has yet to be we've even talked about that before, almost like, well, should we have a backup? Because if we have this location, what if there's just nothing?
Right.
That has never happened. Matter of fact, not only has it been this story, but then, oh, by the way, there's another story. And there's and there's all these layers that basically reveal themselves, which that's what makes it fascinating.
Maryam, there's one other thing I wanted to say. When the Colonel was denying everything and calling it all lies, I wanted to interject. We've got receipts. we've got ancestry.
That's awesome. What's cool, and you can't. What's been interesting is us doing the Black History specials. The few times I ran into slave owners, as Terri knows, they were very demonic and they were to be removed, and it was probably the more dangerous encounters I've had. I just found it interesting that, again, with this gentleman, they're like, this whole meeting starts to happen. And I'm like, what's going on? It's so funny because when the big guys come in, you know, I get real small because they're just like, you're not going to be doing this. But it's like there was this whole exchange happening where you come with us, and it's like, oh, sorry, did I do that? You know what I mean? It's like, because he's like, had you not done this, you know, that's which is why he didn't want to talk. But point being is these slave owners, understandably, but yet they all tend to some of them have even said they don't want to pass over because they don't want to deal with what's on the other side because they know. So they stay stuck, and for a certain amount of time, whatever the rules are, I don't know what they are, they're allowed to be. But I love how when their time is up, they need to be taken away because it's like, we've granted you that time to kind of sit and be scared. But now, and I just, the consistency with that is like, whoa, that's a trip.
Yeah.
That's a trip.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you, Chip. That was fascinating.
Thank you so much.
Fascinating.
Chip, it was that was awesome. Appreciate that greatly. Terri, what about next Saturday? Can you give us a little tease of what's going on next week?
I'm gonna need therapy by the end of the
Next week is real. It's Kat Dyson, who is one of my dear friends, and I'm a huge fan of, is a phenomenal guitarist. She has played all over the world, and her most notable person that she played with is behind Prince. And she's played with Cher and Cyndi Lauper.
Wow.
But what I love about her is that I've gone to music conferences with her, and the degree of respect that people give her. She's just such a phenomenal talent and a really interesting, woman. And I'm not even going to say where the location is because it's pretty intense. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, folks. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for everybody that's been in the chat. There was a lot of comments about it being an emotional episode. It definitely was. It was a lot of things, but it was absolutely insightful and awesome. So we appreciate everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Terri.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.